Celebrating 125 years of exploration, we are DC Public Library. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for regular programming for you and your family. DC Public Library, find your story.
Hello, I'm David Quick, Adult Services Coordinator with the DC Public Library. I'm happy to welcome you to today's special event with DCPL's own Micah Powell, also known as Micah the Poet. During LGBTQ Pride Season and all year long, it is critical to elevate queer voices, and we are thrilled to highlight Micah's poetry and his new book, Things No One Else Wants to Say. I am also happy to have a good friend of the library, Regie Cabico, here to have a conversation with Micah about his work. Regie is the director of Capturing Fire and has worked closely with Micah to publish his new book. Thanks for joining us, Regie. Please enjoy Micah's reading and find other Pride events at dclibrary.org/dcpride. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Micah the Poet. I'm a DMV-based poet. I've been at this for probably about 20 years, so just gonna do a set for you guys for my new book. It's called Things No One Else Wants to Say. Thank you so much to DCPL, to David Quick for this opportunity. The first poem that I'm gonna read is called Ear to the Streets. It's one of the first poems that I wrote when I was a teenager, probably about 13, 14, and I wanted to write about how I wanted to present myself as an artist and the type of poet that I wanted to be. So here we go. It's called Ear to the Streets. I'm trying to use my creativity to say something that's gonna make y'all feel me. Say something to move you and sprinkle that special sparkling tingly like the poetry your ears are worthy to hear. I don't want to have step on this. There's been too many times while caught up in my own personal time, I've used my poetry to give you an explanation of me instead of something to feed you mentally. I yearn for inspiration that will make my words so deep that they appeal to your aesthetics. Like my words will compare to the purple haze cast by Jimmy. I want you to hallucinate while I'm speaking. Sit back and see how far this rabbit hole goes. I want to pique your curiosity like sex to a young woman in chastity. Keep pushing until you feel that break in your pubic. Let me mind love you like you've never been before. I want to say something to make you feel. I guess the best thing for me to do would be to give my ears to you. Make my words influential, like Facebook ads are monumental. I want to put my ear to these streets literally. I want to document every pebble. I want to count the woes of every teenage pimple, tell of things complex and simple, from the problems with geriatrics to hurt little girls to crooked police tactics. I want to be like T.I., always know what's up and what's happening. Comment on how people are acting. Remind folks that the pain is just a fraction. This is a big life we lead. Short, precious, blank, and pure. All we need do is add the happy little trees and the playful fluffy clouds and the sturdy little bushes. Make a portrait the world will remember. I want to be a storyteller. Keep my ear to the pavement. Document how humanity made it. That way, I will always have something to say. So this next poem, once I realized what I wanted to do, I then started to try and write about things that people were going through and what I was going through. So I wrote my first love poem. It was about kissing someone. I had never kissed anyone in my life. So this was just a poem that I had gleaned emotions from other people to write. So here it goes. It's called I Kept. After we had kissed that first time, I felt like I had finally gotten what was mine. So I kept licking my lips, trying to taste your kiss, trying to drink in some remnant of you. Feeling like if I could just sip you slowly, like Maxwell, you'd be good to the last drop. When I kissed you that first time, I didn't want to stop. I wanted everything in that moment to last forever. For that second when I was on cloud one, there was nothing I wouldn't have done. At that moment where the moon, stars, and sun moved about our bodies and spun, we had become metaphysical. No longer the mere feeling of lust, but it's adoration that makes me stare. I wanted nothing more than to stay right there. From the first time we kissed, I kept licking my lips, trying to taste your kiss, trying to drink in some remnant of you. So from that one, I started to get into more of a advocate role and started writing poems about my community. So this poem is called The Jar, and it is about persevering. Once I knew a beautiful brown girl with bright bows in her hair that skipped through the air like meteors in the night sky. She always kept a smile, a gift of kindness for everyone that stepped in her aura, and a backpack filled with paper, pencils, and pens for class, and a jar full to bursting with small rips of paper. And she would keep this jar under her desk, ripping off small corners of her test and shoving them into her jar. Eyes bright and glowing like she was handing a newborn baby to its mother, she cherished these strips of paper as if they were what were keeping her alive. And at the end of class, she would tuck her jar in her backpack and head home. And this young girl performed this ritual day after day until one day I was walking around the corner to get a burger and I saw her crying on the curb. Huddled over her jar, tears smearing the ink on her small, ripped pieces of paper. Heartbroken, I sat beside her. But before I could speak, without even looking at me, her freshly tear-stained eyes locked intently on her jar, she says, "It's okay. I'm just counting." See, whenever God gives me tears, I count them while I count my blessings. My tears always lose to my blessings. Astounded, I sat next to her as she counted her blessings, smiling and glowing a little more with every layer of the jar gone. And soon, she was brand new. That beautiful brown girl. A beautiful brown girl with bright bows in her hair that skipped through the air like meteors in the night sky. Whoever thought to cure the misery could be a good memory? I applaud her being. She made me see the blessing in living, in forgiving. Forever changed, I walked away, because if she could keep her head up, then I could too. See, she blessed me with the strength to share this story with you. So the next poem was a little more political, and I wanted to comment about police brutality in my community, so I did. This poem is called Hands Up. Hands up! Hands up, I say. Overseer, officer, hands up! Please, I'll do whatever you want. Just don't hurt me. My hands were up. But in defense to my surrender, I was punched and tackled, put in a chokehold, and slammed against computers. I could have been Eric Garner or Michael Brown. Fraternal Order of Police. Tell me a reason besides my skin color that I am a threat. Why must you protect yourself from the unarmed? You hold the power. That standard issue 9mm has taken away so many standard issue lives. Tell me, how do you sleep at night? You arrest journalists and allow hate groups to assemble. My queen got punched in the face by the KKK, and you're more worried about brown people in pain? Again, I say, how do you sleep? See, one day soon, the people will rise up. Then what will you do, boys in blue, when the guns are taking a turn on you? Hands up. Hands up, I say. Laws were created with the golden rule in mind, but you undermine justice seeking a collar, and my heart breaks when I see a strong brown king break with terror in his eyes, a foot on his neck, and all you can hear is, "Help me!" Or I can't breathe. Do they teach you in the academy that life has no meaning? Do they brainwash you so that you have no gender, no ethnicity, just the blues? I would like to know what goes through your mind when you see dead bodies laid out for hours at a time. Do you hurt for the mothers? Does your honor waver when you see terror, mistrust, and helplessness in the eyes of those you claim to protect and serve? Speak up. If you are not the overseer that we see you as, do something on behalf of your brethren. Forget the press. Protect the citizens from each other. Do not protect yourselves from the people. We do not need to be contained or controlled. We need protection from injustice. So hands up. Remember your oath. Hands up. Remember you're human. Hands up. Remember your mercy. Hands up. Remember the slain. Hands up. On your knees. Assume the position. So right after that, I began to write about the people in my community and the different communities that I was a part of. So I wrote 2 letters. They're both short. One is called Letter to the Bigot. One is called A Letter from a Queer to the World. So this is Letter to a Bigot. A letter to the man who believes God has made a mistake in creating me. God has no gender, but it's 3 beings. We are all trying to be more God-like. God gave me quandary and helped me through. Strength to show who I can be despite my circumstances. God gave me testimony. My heart's life. I'm going to start that again. Letter to the Bigot. A letter to the man who believes God has made a mistake in creating me. God has no gender, but it's 3 beings. We are all trying to be more God-like. God gave me quandary and helped me through. Strength to show who I can be despite my circumstances. God gave me testimony. My heart and life's purpose are all for the glory of my Maker. God's goal is to create life that will praise the Creator. No mistake here. So that was more for me, a letter personally to a personal experience that I had. This next poem is called A Letter from a Queer to the World. I am a queer person and felt that it was necessary to write a letter to kind of not even explain, but to give notice of our experiences and our validity in this world. So, letter from a queer to the world. To whom it may concern, most of us are ripped, battered, and torn from dark, closeted past. We come from childhoods where we were mostly shadows and masks. Queer. An adjective to describe something strange or odd. When I was young, people would always ask me who I wanted to grow up to be. And I would always say normal. I was aware at present I was not. These buds of self-doubt grew, showered my senses, and shortly after, I reaped my first harvest of self-loathing. People always ask me what queer love looks like. And I tell them, it looks like rain in a desert, like snow in Johannesburg, like a dirt road through a thick forest, like lightning with no thunder. It looks like love where you didn't think it could be. It looks as hard fought for as it feels. It looks like week-long romances ending in marriage, and maybe we do get married too quick, but it's only because our longing to build something beautiful from the ruins of such early trauma and heartbreak is overwhelming. We have been fighting to be seen since before we could remember, to be understood. So we hug strangers, hold parties for people that act like us, create spaces void of family and maybe some friends and call it safe, constantly searching for comfort from our demons. We reclaimed the word love from churches like black people did, nigga, threw some glitter on it and rebranded it as a verb. We did what they thought we couldn't. We survived together.
Hello, welcome. My name is Regie Cabico, and I am here at the newly renovated auditorium at MLK Library in Washington, D.C. It is my great pleasure and honor to welcome a fabulous poet, the author of Things No One Else Wants to Say, published by Capturing Fire Press, a press that I have been working with over the last 5 years to feature queer poets, DC poets, and exciting new voices. Things No One Else Wants to Say is a book that encapsulates Micah's experiences as a Black queer man. The book is structured beautifully into 3 parts between family, life, and love. Welcome to MLK Library.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, DCPL. Thank you for having me, Reggie.
Well, DCPL is lucky to have you here, but also I just want to give a shout out because you're also probably one of the most beloved librarians in DCPL, serving Anacostia. Hey, Anacostia in the house, represent. Because you're a librarian, because you write poetry, I feel like those are a lot of worlds to straddle. So I think the love of books and the love of writing go hand in hand. And I feel I'd love to actually ask about how you got into writing, and it's got to be folded into the love of books. So if we could go back into young Micah, if you could tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, sure. I have been doing poetry for a little bit over 20 years. I started performing, writing and performing on stages when I was 10 years old. How I got into it was my mom loved books. She loved writing. She always had me and my brother journal all the time, just about everything that we were feeling, things that we went through during the day, that kind of stuff. And so in the midst of us journaling, I just started writing small sermons and speeches and poems and things like that, just reflecting not only my experience, but the life experience of people around me. And by the time I was about 10, and that started probably when I was 7 or 8. So by the time I was about 10, I was already being invited places to speak and to write poems for different events with the family and things like that. So it's kind of the poet laureate of my family until I started performing out in the world doing open mics and things like that when I was later on, probably around 15, 16. But yes, it came from having a mom that was loved books and loved writing, and I just took to it. I took to it like a fish to water. I loved being on stages. I loved being able to relate to people and helping people relate to each other based on my pieces. And one of the biggest reasons why I got into poetry was I heard a poem by Phenomenal Woman by Maya Angelou. Yeah, when I was 4 or 5 years old, and I think that was the first time art had really gave me the tingles, and I was like, ooh, I want to do that. So I think it's been a great journey, but that was really why I got into it.
So, can you talk about the structures of the book? And I know this is your first collection, so congratulations. Capturing Fire is really honored to publish your work. Could you tell us about the process of, because I'm sure you have millions of poems and you wanted to try to distill it, and I know that that was a process. So could you talk a little bit about what went in, and also it's a treat that we're also hearing what didn't make it in as well, right? Some of the poems that didn't make it. So could you talk a little bit about how you structured the pieces and the book?
So I wanted the book to have some flow. I wanted the book to be more of a memoir than an actual collection of poetry, or like your everyday collection of poetry. I wanted it to have some type of flow to it, some type of cohesiveness, a base, or an ideology that people could attach themselves to while reading the poetry. That way they would be able to think of instances in their own lives while they were reading the poems. And I hoped that it would resonate a little bit more with them if I did that. So love, life, and family are three really broad categories that I felt like I had enough poems to fit into and make a chapter out of each part, and also allow the poetry to build on each other, right? So the foundation of family, the life that you have with that family, the love that you find, and the different levels of love that you experience with your family and with your significant others that often become your family. So I just wanted everything, all the poems, to really feed off of each other and really just be kind of a relatable place where, you know, if you're in love, you can flip to the love chapter and you might find some words that'll be able that you can send to your boo, your significant other, and maybe, you know, find some place for yourself in your emotions.
The book has a lot of range. I'm sure that you were also looking for the range. I love some of the short poems in the book. I love some of the long poems in the book. I noticed that there's a lot of epistolary poems and letters flow. So could you talk a little bit about some of that structure of letters? I think that they're such a good catalyst, and so maybe how the epistolary poem and that kind of address sort of develops some of your poetry in your writing.
Yeah, I really enjoy telling stories. But my poems, when I first started writing poetry, my poems were relatively short, probably, 12 lines. That's it, 1 minute, 30 seconds, that's all you're getting. It took me a while to mature to the point where I had enough to say that it was a more full poem. So I started having to switch it up from kind of like a sonnet or, and start like playing with other literary devices on how to fit all of the words that I had to say, or all of these large, all-encompassing emotions onto just a page. And me and my mom used to write letters to each other all the time when I was away. I moved away to go to school and poetry and stuff for about 10 years. And every day we either called or we wrote emails to each other or we wrote letters. And that was a big way that we figured out a lot about our feelings for one another. And so I felt like if I could form my poetry in a way that was a narrative form, or a way that was a letter, and something, it would not only be something that would touch people, but it would also give people that personable experience, not only with the emotions that are in the book, but with their own emotions and with the people around them.
Now, I got to give a shout out to your mom, who,
Love you, Mom.
as a queer poet, it is a challenge to reconcile a relationship. I know I have my own challenges within my own family, for my own queer identity. But when you put your poetry out there and you have the support of your mom, which is just beautiful and wonderful, how did it feel? Because I know you're like, okay, these are some real personal, edgy shit that's in this book. Right, and poetry's supposed to be dangerous. We don't write poetry to to please our parents. We got to write where we are, and we got to tell the truth. And so, talk a little bit about that, because there are a lot of poets who are not open about their queer identity, or they'll just write about flowers, and they're not going to go into just getting real. So can we talk about how you can be so real and how this book can be so public? And you are raw, so not only are you opening up yourself to readers that you don't know, but also in the audiences that you dazzle in the open mics. And then you also have your family. So talk about how all of this comes together. And I also know that besides your mom and family support and the multitude of community who support you here, you also have some canines and little kitties, and like you are also the same. So that's yet another thing that we'll address. But let's just talk about being raw and the support that you have and the courage that you have to just say it like it is.
Cool. Yes, I have an answer for that. So I started talking when I was 18 months. It probably would have been sooner if I'd have put my mind to it, but I had a lot to say very early on. I was very articulate, very outspoken, and I have always kind of been the person that says things no one else wants to say. And so I think coming from a childhood like that, and getting to a point where I was performing poems that were real and edgy and hard and had cuss words in it and stuff like that. My mom is one of the most loving people, and I think the fact that her love has covered me very much growing up. And it's put me in a place where I've always pretty much had good support in being authentically me and being myself. But I also think that was because nobody really wanted to cross her. She wasn't. She's not one to play with. So I was kept very safe for that. But I think I also have always been very authentic and open with not only my person, but allowing people to be in or out of that experience, right? I don't ever force anyone to be in my life or treat me a certain way or acknowledge me as one thing or another. My whole goal in life is to just try to be the best person that I can be and help as many people as I can while I still have breath in my body. And I think that, when you live like that, it creates a safe space for people because apparently not a lot of people are like that. And so just between my coworkers, my family, my friends, the different circles that I'm in and the support that I get from all types of communities, I think it really comes from just me being able to humble myself and allow myself to be vulnerable. And I think what happened when it changed from my mom kind of looking at my poetry as, about flowers or about, candy, hearts, and love and stuff, and it started getting a little more real and it started getting a little more dark. I think it put her in a place where she seen me as a person and not just as her kid, but as a person that has actual feelings, that go through things and that understand things on an abstract level, and then can articulate them into concrete things that then other people can get with as well. So I think once she started seeing that people were being touched by the work and it wasn't as embarrassing as she thought it was going to be.
Right.
And I still was safe and happy, and my mind was intact. And I think that's really all your parents want. At the end of the day, no matter what you look like, whether you're queer or not, throughout all the differences, if you sit a parent down and you ask them, look, do you love your child? You know, 9 times out of 10, they're going to say yes, you know, and they're going to want for their child to be whole and happy, no matter what it takes. And I think her seeing, even though the poetry was a little gritty, it was healing me, and it was making me whole. And her acceptance and her love, and what she's given me on a continual basis, it was healing me, and it was making me whole, and it was ultimately doing the same thing for others in turn. So I think just being able to see that, you know, with your child gave her, you know, the courage that she needed to love as radically as she does. And I think, you know, if you would ask her, she wouldn't even say it was radical. You know, it's every day for her. But I think just being able to conceptualize me as a human being allowed her to accept me and love me, you know, for whatever my art had to give.
It sounds so simple, but it's so difficult, and it's so complex, right?
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to the cover, which is just
Shout out
so
to Rich.
compelling, and I'd love to hear a little bit about the story behind the cover, about the artwork a little bit.
Okay, so the artwork was done by Ricochet Rocket. He is a graphic designer in the DMV area, and I wanted to source the artwork for my book from my family and also from a local artist in the area. So I had a picture. That is an actual picture of me sitting in the corner in timeout. I still have that stool. I use it every day. I was sitting in that corner in the picture because I was saying things no one else wanted to say or should have been saying at the time. So I felt like the picture itself was very indicative of the effect that I wanted to give before you started reading the book, right? You already know I'm going to say some things in this book that's going to get me put in the corner. You should already know this. I'm in the corner in the front. So I think it sets a tone for understanding me as a person and as a writer, and then allowing the reader to understand what they're about to read as well. And I think all of us can kind of relate and remember what it took to get into timeout as kids. So, you know, I want in the book, it ends on a very kind of a high note of redemption and love and fullness, kind of a full circleness. And I did that specifically because when you open the book, it acknowledges my flaws. It acknowledges that I make mistakes. It acknowledges that I don't always do what's right. And I have been making mistakes my whole life. You can tell because I made a mistake as a baby and had to pay for my mistakes. So I think I wanted to impart those two things whenever people looked at the cover of the book. Plus, I just think it looks really cute.
Well, you know, you say you made a lot of mistakes. I mean, that's very Sagittarius to really be open and candid. And if you're going to make a mistake, you'll make it really, really big. So I want to acknowledge Hands Up in the book. I don't necessarily want to, I didn't intend to single out a particular poem, but I remember that I published Hands Up in the first anthology, Super Stoked, which is the anthology that captures all the voices that have been performing at the Capturing Fire Festival. The poem just hits me in the gut. The first time I heard you read it, I think you were overcome with emotion. I think the audience was as well. It's a poem that's still applicable, unfortunately, and still relevant, fortunately and unfortunately. These poems you've been living with, how does it feel to perform a poem of that intensity, and what does that mean for you now? And now that the poem's in the book, is there any healing and or closure when you publish the work, and I know that that was coming from such a painful place and experience. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, there's a lot of painful poems in the book. Being black, being dark black, being queer has always put a multitude of targets on my back with a multitude of people, holding the guns. And so I think Hands Up was I've been saying Hands Up probably for close to 10 years now, and it never stings any less. It never hurts any less to acknowledge those things. And I don't even go through problems like that with officers anymore. I've since learned to protect myself and, what to do in these different situations. But it never changes the fact of that helplessness and that desperation. It never goes away, no matter how many times I read the poem. And sometimes a lot, there's quite a few of the poems in the book that are actually like that. While I don't think they'll ever lose their sting, I do think that I have gotten to a point where I use them as more of a catharsis, and it gets easier. I think like you said, the first time I really read Hands Up, I was bawling. I think it was really hard for me to get through it. When I read these poems now, I still find myself fighting back tears. And it's this array of emotions. You're grateful, you're apprehensive, you're happy, you're thankful, you're joyful, you're scared, you're nervous. There's so many things going through you whenever you are saying poetry that is divisive, right? And I never thought that Hands Up would be a poem that not only resonates with civilians and officers, but a poem that facilitates conversation, because in the poem I ask questions. And so those, sometimes after I read the poems and we do a talk or something after the poem, those questions come back up. And they have to get real-time answers from real-time people. And so the fact that poems like Hands Up have been so impactful, and they're so impactful to me, it is a release, and it does, and I guess I release a tiny bit of anxiety about it every time I say it, but I think every time I read Hands Up, until something really, really drastically changes, every time I read Hands Up, it's gonna hit in a very sensitive place, because I think, having these different tiers of marginalization stacked up against you, you kind of have to find a way to speak to these people, speak to the bigots, speak to the police officers, speak to the racists, you have to learn to speak to these people with love and with an openness that comes with being confident in yourself and in your community. And so I think that's pretty much what it is for me. It is somewhat healing, but what I would say is it's more so galvanizing. Every time I write a poem that moves me or moves other people, it usually moves me to write more and to kind of get the words out there in the way that that is going to get people to the point where they would like to incite change for themselves.
Great, thank you, Micah. I wanted to say that the book it's not even a year. This has been out maybe for 6 months now. I'm excited to celebrate this book in person rather than being on Zoom. What is the last 6 months since this book has been out? Can you share what some of the reaction has been as you have been reading for the book, and what that experience has been like? Because you've always been doing the readings, but now because you have the book, I just feel like that you've just been blown up, and you're reaching new audiences at this point. So can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the positive experiences that have happened over the last 6 months since the book has been out?
Well, first, thank you so much for this opportunity to even have, a book like this out. It has been a wonderful, wonderful experience. I've been maintaining, getting virtual gigs. We're starting back with open air gigs over the summer. My whole conceptualization about myself and about me as a writer and as a poet has changed so drastically. I think after the book was out for about 2 weeks, I've me and my mom were riding in the car, and I was like, this is like crazy. Like this is the first. I'm 31 years old, and I've been doing this for 20 some odd years, and for the first time in my life, I feel like a poet. Like I'm supposed to be doing this. And my mom was like, "You've been on stages for forever. This doesn't even make any sense." But I had to kind of break it down to her, like, when you're just coming up and reading off your paper or reading off phones, and no one has anything tangible to keep from you, you're kind of just in and out with the night, Mm-hmm. And now, with the book, people are connecting with family members that they were having problems with before. People are learning to write in ways that are so beautiful. I met a young woman who didn't write poetry before she read my book. After she read my book, she's been writing like a poem a day ever since. This beautiful poetry. So being able to inspire people on that level, as well as getting to work with teenagers in high schools and let them know about my journey and about how being a poet isn't so far. Mm-hmm. And I enjoy being an author, and it has been it's a wonderful, wonderful experience, being able to touch so many people and do these different events and do these different interviews. I've had to bone up on a lot of skills that I didn't have before. Probably before all of this happened, I probably did maybe three or four interviews in my life. I now take 3 or 4 interviews probably every week. So it's been a 100% 360, 180. Sorry about that. and I've loved every moment of it, and it's also kind of allowed me to learn to set boundaries with myself and within my home and within my own space. And like I said, I just never thought that I would have to learn how to do that, but I'm booked up very nice. The Lord has been amazing and blessing me with all these different opportunities. So it's just been a really, really big blessing, and I've been very happy, very grateful, and just been trying to pay it forward in every way that I can.
Terrific. We're at the end. I just wanted to see if you had final words or advice to young writers. I know it feels like that's a typical question, but I do feel it's always about one poem sparking another poem and getting a young queer voice to write poems. So I guess any advice to any of the young writers out there? And thank you so much, Micah.
Yeah, I just wrote this poem. It's really long, so I don't read it, but it's 10 things that I'd say to my 15-year-old self. So I'll give some advice that I got from that. I will say, always be confident in yourself and in your work. Be willing to share your pieces and be vulnerable. Trust your community, your support system. Trust your parents more than, give them a little more credit. At least give them a chance to see you and to understand the work that you're doing. Don't ever stop writing. Don't ever stop writing. Always, even if you're not sharing it. I took a break from poetry. I had a long battle that I had with myself. And I stopped doing poetry for about 4 or 5 years. And if I had trusted myself and trusted my community, it probably would have been a lot shorter. But don't ever be afraid to take a break, because after I took that break and I came back, I met Regie, and the rest is history. So we're here now. So don't ever be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't ever be afraid to take your time. Trust your community. Trust the people that say that they love you and that they care about you. I would not be here at all without the likes of Regie, without the likes of Capture Fire Press, without the likes of DCPL, without the likes of my mom, without the likes of my brother, and without the likes of all the people that have held me down since I've been in DC. So trust your circle, trust your community, and your community isn't what you're forced into. Your community is who you make it to be. That's your tribe. It's the people that are around you, and that love you and that are going to uplift you no matter what. So always keep writing, keep loving, be confident, and always, always continue to be the best person you can be.
And the book is Things No One Else Wants to Say by Micah the Poet. Thank you so much. Shout out to DC Public Library. Shout out to David Quick. And happy Queer Pride Month. And keep writing, and may the muse be with you.
So these next set of poems are poems that did not make the book, but are very near and dear to my heart and have helped me a lot through the journey that I've been through in my life. So hopefully it touches some other people too. Hope you enjoy it. So this first poem was a poem that I wrote in response to another DCPL virtual program that I went to with Diana Vega. She was doing a story time, shout out to Diana, and a young woman, Brandis, was telling a story of loss and finding her way through that grief. So I wrote a poem about it. Losing someone you love feels like breathing underwater. Not like some metaphor, like if I could breathe underwater stuff either. Like from the Saw movie, when dude's head was stuck in that glass box filling with water and he had to poke the pin through his neck just to get air in his lungs, just to hold on for a few more minutes type stuff. Unnatural, lonely, hopeless. Every breath in is a struggle that you're somehow thankful for. Every breath out is a longing to be anywhere else but right where you are. You want to scream, but all you can do is breathe. I heard a great story about loss the other day, and it got me thinking. We never really lose anything. They say energy never dissipates. Our bodies die, but the spark that gives us our brightness never really goes away. The people that love you mean it when they say they will always be there. Life is a morning of moments, and memories are the dew, attaching themselves to smells, subtle breezes, coincidences too good to be true. The memory of the ones we've lost will always be a part of our life experience. They will hold you like they held you. They will touch you like they touched you. They will console you like they consoled you. Honestly, this thought made me feel better than all the grief books, all the memorials, all the calls and texts of condolence, like Brandis said. I just didn't feel so alone anymore. I could feel the warm sun on my face and appreciate my granny and every honeysuckle that wafts its way up my nose. Know that it is her in the breeze. Feel my very best friend in my anxious moments and that tingle of courage that it takes to authentically be me. I am still whole, still strong, still kicking, guided by spectacular beings, all living in the flesh or in my flesh. You never really lose anyone. The way they look is a little different. But when people that love you say they'll never leave you, they mean it. So that was the first one. This next poem was one of my poems for National Poetry Month. So a lot of poets do 30 for 30, so we write a poem every day for 30 days. So these next couple of poems are from that. This poem is called Dust Mop. My mama used to always make me dust mop. I don't know if y'all ever seen a dust mop, but it ain't a broom. My brother got the broom. I had the dust mop. This floppy bunny on a stick that I would wish-wash about the floor haphazardly until my much more meticulous brother would come behind me and sweep. I love my mama. She taught me that's how stuff get clean. That's how stuff get done. You ain't got to be perfect. You ain't got to get the whole floor. You bring support. If you a dust mop, get you a broom. Heck, ask your mama if she trying to bring the wet jet. Get you a team. Clean it up. You a dust mop, but you meaningful. You worthy. If mama ain't teach you nothing, she taught you you're part of the process. So one of my really close friends during 30 for 30 ended up losing someone that she was very close to. And I wrote this poem in solidarity with her for that. It's called Questions While Missing You. Why grief pop up like nightmare midday? Everything's been all okay, then it's not all okay. I miss you, but I'm glad to have known you. Why sorrow gotta drop kick you like Bruce Lee when you just trying to make something to eat? Maybe it's because I know I'm not cooking for you and me. Why loss so greedy? You could have left me a little something to tend to these wounds. Instead of just taking all of me. Why peace so elusive? Every time I think I got this, I'm fine, time becomes abusive because it's full of hollow moments, empty of you. Why healing can't just be linear? I want to get over you the same way I fell for you. In an instant, all these questions just equate to a misery I struggle to mask with anything, even madness. Maybe that's where I'll find you, where today and tomorrow meet. Maybe you will be in the seams, waiting for me. So, I got 2 poems left. This next poem, it took me forever to read this poem out loud. I finally did read it out loud for the Emancipation Day program we have for DCPL. Shout out to Diana again. This poem is called I Don't Mind Being Black. I don't mind being black. I don't mind coming from the lineage of Henrietta Lacks. I don't mind that some folks don't know that science, life, and everlasting beauty was built on black backs. I don't blame them for laughing at Sarah Bartman. I don't mind that it should be named Banneker Plaza instead of LaFont Plaza. I don't hate folks for electing Obama, and I don't hate Michelle raising black daughters in the White House. I don't mind that there are still sundown counties, that it is not safe to be walking and black, sitting while black, sleeping while black. I don't mind being black. I don't mind the fact that Matthew Henson found the North Pole and Vivian Thomas was the first person to understand and effectively teach open heart surgery, or that Box Brown was the first brown Amazon box with a black smile shipping its way to freedom. I don't mind being black. I don't mind that Sam Cooke sang about a change that was going to come. I don't mind that Marsha P. threw the first brick. I don't mind that Martin dreamed dreams. I don't mind that Baldwin wanted us to see the power in the depths of our hues. I don't know what it was like to be black back then, when we was proud, before fate broke us down. They didn't know that we are seeds. We will continue to grow no matter how many times gentrification cuts and sows new things here. Like the parable, we will always break through. Despite you. Despite ourselves, we are the children of Carver, Ali, Malcolm, Harriet, Jackie, Langston, Maya, Nikki, Bessie, Hector, Sojourner, Dorian, C.J. Walker, Octavia, Ella, Paul, Alex, Ellie, Duke. Come on, y'all. I have shed so many bitter tasting tears through gritted dueling teeth just over the color of my skin. I've seen black women sleeping on buses, fists clenched because they will never know rest. I've seen mothers, fathers, families destroyed over and over again in so many ways, and I'm always left wondering, how do I stay human? I don't even mind that I haven't lived enough to answer that. To me, black things are firsts. Our wins, our triumphs are important, impactful, worth dying for. Our lives serve as a representation of who each of us could be. For all our flaws, for all of the powers that have shortened us, we stand tall. We empower anyway. We unify anyway. We love anyway. I don't mind being black. Being black is resilient. Throw what you want on it. Black absorbs and continues to shine. Some see black before they see God. So I don't mind. I am going to make it. My ancestors lead me. They are our martyrs. You cannot silence our deeds and the fact that we have done it while black. I'd rather be black. I'd rather be free. Okay, so this last poem is familiar to my DCPO family. I've learned a lot in the last 5 or 6 years working here, and it's been an amazing experience. So this is a poem that I wrote for my boss. She gave me some advice one day, so here we go. I was talking with my boss the other day. She told me about how we often consider the challenge, but never the transference. Bad times don't last always, but we focus on the rain instead of the rainbow. Like it ain't never rained before. Like we ain't cry when we was born. Like we ain't never fell and skinned our knees. Like the sun ain't never came after the rain. Like your mama bosom ain't comfort you to sleep. Like we never got knee kisses and were told to get up. We act like bad times is all the time. Like we ain't never let the sun dry our tears or a kind hand dry our tears. We go into a challenge not knowing we've already played this game. We've been champions. I am going to go into every day like I got blessings, like trouble ain't so bad, like it don't last always. Don't let your bad days be your only days. Make your way to better days. Nothing in this world stays the same, and there's peace in that, joy in that, life in that. So live. Live like you will always be enough. Because it's not about the challenge. It's about who you come to find on the other side. It's about the transference, the give and take, the balance.